Hi folks, my name's Alistair Gray. I'm the National Academic E-Learning Manager, and I'm here on the Gold Coast campus in the Fishbowl talking about unsaturated fats with the Program Leader in the Department of Naturopathy, Dr. Kate Broderick. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, hey. And so we need to talk about naturopathy.
Okay.
We're in the middle of this program. We're at the beginning third of this program, and it's time now for students that have been exploring some large questions about what's health really, what is the nature of symptoms, why are we here, some of those questions.
Right.
To start looking now at some specific whole healing medical systems and modalities. So talk us through, at the outset, who you are, where you're from, and then we'll get to naturopathy.
Okay. Well, I am Dr. Kate Broderick. I am a naturopathic physician from the United States, and naturopathy education and regulation is actually quite different in the United States than it is here. I came to Australia because I like the framework of naturopathy better in Australia than in the US. Well, that's one of the reasons I came anyway. And I am a practicing naturopath, or I was a practicing naturopath prior to coming from the United States. Also, I am a 5-element acupuncturist. And I'm the program leader of naturopathic medicine, as Alistair said, at Endeavour. And so naturopathic philosophy is actually one of my big passions, and it's one of the reasons that I came to Endeavour. They were interested in that aspect of my teaching background and in my traditional practice, and so I'm happy to be here, and I love talking about naturopathic philosophy to anyone who will listen. And you're a captive audience right now, so.
Good. Well, let's start right there, because naturopathy is a term which in some parts of the world they go, huh? And other parts it's on, Sunrise TV.
Right.
So, talk us through, what is naturopathy?
Well, naturopathy means different things in different places, and I think perhaps that's fortunate and unfortunate. I look at naturopathy, and certainly it is a very, very eclectic system of medicine that is practiced differently in every country in which it's practiced, and even within each country there's a wide variety of ways that naturopathy can be practiced. For example, I personally am a very, very traditional naturopath, and I tend to gravitate more towards using much more traditional therapies and approaches, which generally means a much more conservative and gentle approach to treating illness, whereas there are lots of naturopaths who like to do higher force interventions. They might get their results faster, and the body responds to that in different ways as well. So there are lots of different things that naturopathy is, and one of the things that I think is really important to understand about what is naturopathy is that it's not defined at all by the modalities of treatment that are used within the system of medicine. A lot of people look at naturopathy and they think, okay, what is that? That's herbs and nutrition and homeopathy and musculoskeletal therapy and flower essences. And so they think of naturopathy as a system of medicine that's defined by the types of treatments that are used by the practitioners. And that's actually not what it is at all. It's a system of medicine that is really defined by the philosophy by which the practitioners undertake treating the person that they're with. And that includes relying on the vital force and the healing power of nature to help bring the patient back to health, recognizing that the body and mind and spirit will naturally gravitate back towards health when they are given the tools that they're needed to do that, and the environment. And knowing that it's not necessary to eradicate disease entities, but it's about creating health as opposed to destroying disease. So those are the sorts of things, in addition to all of the naturopathic principles, that I feel like define naturopathy.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The other important thing to know is that what naturopathy means to everybody each individual practitioner, it's different. And what naturopathy was to me 5 years ago, or back when I started school, was a very different idea of what I believe naturopathy to be now. And what I believe naturopathy to be 10 years from now or 20 years from now will probably be different again, because every naturopath always has an evolving and growing idea of the ways that they want to help people heal. And so it's an evolving idea in everyone's minds.
I think it's really important because, again, at the point that these students are heading this conversation, it's at the, if you like, the beginning of the process. And what we've got now is that in this country, naturopathy sits at the centre. You know, it's just naturally gravitated to the centre, if you like. Good marketing, or at least it's found its place in the middle of the complementary medicine landscape. It's smack in the middle, and it really dominates, actually. But it's, as you said, it's not, if you like, modality specific. Now, the philosophy that is underpinning it or behind it, just talk us through some more of those points.
Yeah, so I come from an American framework of naturopathy, and that framework, the definition of the principles of naturopathy, has been adopted in Australia as well. And it's not a matter of the American system being different or superior in any way. It's the fact that the American system has gone further in regulation than Australia has, and by necessity has put a lot more definitions down in writing. And one of those things has been the principles, the 6 principles of naturopathy. And that's something that we teach within our naturopathic philosophy at Endeavour, as it is part of naturopathic education everywhere. And the 6 principles of naturopathic medicine or naturopathy, the first is the healing power of nature, in Latin, the vis medicatrix naturae. That's that vitality, that vital force that I was talking about a minute ago as being one of the defining things for naturopathy as a medical system, and relying upon the vital force to do the healing. It's not the practitioner doing the healing, it's the vital force and nature doing the healing. The second principle, I'm not going to get them in order.
And therefore the medicine is the stimulant, not necessarily the big deal.
Right, and the stimulant and the support, depending upon what level the intervention is at. And sometimes the medicine is removing negative influences. It's not about adding anything. It's about getting the negative influences out of the way. So if I'm drinking too much coffee to enable myself to work really hard, and I'm
organic.
No milk or sugar, mind you.
Of course.
If I'm drinking a lot of coffee and that's enabling me to work harder and to perhaps not rest or play or sleep as much as my body needs to be healthy, then the healing in that instance has to do with removing the overwork and removing the stimulus of the coffee, or at least diminishing it. It's not about adding anything. It's not about adding a herb or adding any specific food. So we call that removing obstacles to cure in the therapeutic order of naturopathy. So, yeah. And the rest of the principles, having not brought my notes with me, I probably won't list them in order. Right, because they do have a specific order. I can list all 6 of them, but perhaps not in the order that we would study them.
We'll get there. Yeah. Okay, number 2.
Number 2.
Yes.
Number 2 is treat the whole person, I believe. No, it's first do no harm. Because I always think, first do no harm should be the first one. No, it's the second one, because the healing power of nature is more important.
So there is something out there that's going to assist these symptoms. There will be something in nature that can assist.
Yes.
Yeah. So number 1. The second is do no harm.
Do no harm. First, do no harm.
First, do no harm.
And that has to do with always choosing the least force intervention that is necessary to address any particular condition. So we can choose, when we say least force intervention, those are things like removing the obstacles to cure and providing whole foods and adequate hydration and adequate sleep, and all of those other health-supporting behaviors, which we call the determinants of health. And When you go to a higher level of intervention, the next thing you might go to is something like hydrotherapy or homeopathy, where there's not a lot of substances involved, but it's about supporting the vitality. And the next level of intervention would be actually tonifying a weakened system, so giving a herb or a food or a nutrient that would help to support a system that is ailing. Say a person's digestion is not strong, you might give a bitter herb to stimulate the digestion. And then from there you go to higher and higher levels of intervention. And of course, in some instances, the highest level of intervention is necessary first. If I'm in a car accident and I'm hemorrhaging from a large artery, I don't want someone to take me to a naturopath. I want them to take me to the emergency room because there is a higher level of force needed in a lot of instances. And that's certainly true with chronic disease as well. But a naturopath will always enter into the treatment of a patient at the lowest level, gentlest intervention possible, if they're practicing according to our principles.
Yeah. It's really important because napalm works if you look at things from a certain perspective.
Right.
But do you really need it to get that result?
Right.
So gentle first.
Gentle first.
Then the third one is treat
the whole person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So naturopathy is a whole medical system, as there are others, mostly from the traditional medicine realm. So Ayurvedic medicine, for example, and you guys are learning about all of that in the history of healing. So naturopathy being a whole medical system and looking at the client or patient from the perspective of not only what's going on in the body, but what's going on in the mind, the spirit, the emotions. They say in Ayurvedic medicine that the cause of all illness is a disconnection from the divine. And so when you look at that, and you can conceptualize of a greater power in whatever way you choose to or not. How you connect to something larger than you within your life doesn't need to have anything to do with the divine necessarily in your own mind. But everybody connects with that in a different way, and recognizing that that's a part of our health, connecting to our community and in our families and all of our relationships. And really looking at all of that in a person in a really whole way and figuring out what sorts of things are getting in the way of a person being fully healthy.
And that leads to the fourth one, which is about looking for the cause and the
Treat
true
the cause. Right.
Now that's really important because over my area, especially say homeopathic medicine, over the years has had different opinions about the cause of disease. One of the famous homeopaths, great American homeopath Kent, had a definition of disease that was very similar to what you said before, and he said fundamentally the problem you've got, the arthritic joint, is because you're disconnected from God, really, at the end of the day, and therefore you must aim your treatment at a certain level, otherwise that is just, it's not going to be fixed from the holistic perspective.
Right.
So over time and in different cultures, this idea of cause is very, very important when it comes to treating patients,
Right, and it's also one of the most complex things because oftentimes there are multiple causes, and I like to draw something called a causal diagram. If somebody walks into my office and has high blood pressure, for example, I would look at all the different things that they tell me, the questions that I ask them, the things that I might get on physical exam. What are all the causes that might be giving this person high blood pressure? There could be a family heredity issue. There could be stress issues. There often are, almost always, dietary issues. So you look at all of those things and you think, what's feeding this person's high blood pressure? Which of those causes can I influence with this person? Because you can't always influence all of them. And sometimes you can influence some of the causes in the short term, and you can develop a relationship with the patient over many years' time to allow you to have some influence in the larger causes in the long term. So it's about building relationships to be able to get to and address all of those causes. And we have lots of different ways to influence that as well. But what I find oftentimes, and this is in the nature of being a naturopath, we often look at digestion as being the core to lots of things. So when I look at someone with high blood pressure, I think, what is this person eating and how are they digesting it? Are they absorbing minerals properly from their diet? Because that's going to affect how the blood pressure systems are working, especially the kidneys, because minerals really feed the kidneys. And the water balance in the body is really mineral specific. So I look at those sorts of things, and oftentimes it comes down to, okay, who in our society is eating a perfect diet? Not very many people do, and we have lots of processed foods and such. Why are we not eating the proper diet? There are lots of causes to that are outside of the realm of the individual.
Sure.
There are socioeconomic causes why people might choose to eat fast food versus a whole foods diet. There are emotional reasons why folks eat the way they do, which is a really big component. And I find when you're talking about disconnection from something larger than yourself, oftentimes the food behaviors have to do with that. We can look at industrialized food production and the way that food is produced in the modern Western world and how that feeds our lack of health. That's a lot of different causes, and so a naturopath has to say, okay, what can I influence here? And you have to pick your battles in the room with the patient with regard to, and I'm not talking about battling the patient, but you have to pick the things that you can influence with the individual patient, and then you can go on your own crusades outside of the treatment room with regard to things like sustainable food production
It's so important, that, because it leads us to the fifth principle, really, and
that is going to get them in order.
Well,
embarrassing for me.
No, but I think it's really important, because one of the joys of our work, if you're thinking, am I in the right place, then there is no better job on the planet than sitting in front of somebody and assisting them with their health. It is a joy. It's a privilege. And you get paid for it. It's ridiculous.
In the best circumstances, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're assisting them, guiding them, negotiating with them, and educating them.
Yes.
And that principle of you as teacher, educator is the good stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But it requires an art. That's the art of practice, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
So the fifth principle is doctor as teacher, and the original root of the word doctor, it was docere, and that means to teach. It's not about being the physician, it's about being the teacher and teaching people how to be healthy.
Yeah.
And up until modern biomedicine came into being, really in the middle of the last century, that's what medicine was. GPs taught their patients how to be healthy, and they intervened when they needed to, but they read them the riot act when they weren't eating properly and weren't sleeping properly and weren't drinking enough water. And so that's the naturopaths have picked up that mantle and carried it. And even modern biomedicine is starting to come along with us a bit on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
This principle is actually my favorite principle, and I know one shouldn't pick favorites probably. And probably they drum me out of naturopathy for not picking the healing power of nature as my favorite. But I like this one. I call it the love principle, actually, because I look at this as the way that we love our patients. This is when I'm talking about love, of course, I'm talking about non-romantically, just to make sure that's clear. But I'm talking about the kind of love that, say, the Dalai Lama might talk about, the type of compassion where I can sit with a person in complete non-judgment of anything about what they've got going on in their life, and to really love all the parts of them and all the parts of their health supportive or health obstructive behaviors in their life, or the different influences that they have going on, and look at that with compassion and meet them where they are and say, okay, how can we go forward as a team together to work on bringing you to feeling better? And that's what it's about. It's about getting people feeling better and having a higher quality of life. And I love teaching patients in different settings. I will teach on a one-to-one setting with patients. I do classes with patients. I love teaching at Endeavor to teach budding naturopaths to teach patients. And I think it's really the most important thing that we do, because it's where you give the patient back their power. It's where you help them understand that they are the ones that hold the key to the kingdom of being the best person that they can be, to get the most out of their life experience that they can get, and to really bring somebody from a place of being beaten down and feeling weighed down by especially a chronic disease to a place of real empowerment is a really beautiful thing to participate in.
Yep, for sure. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Hey, what's the sixth principle?
Prevention.
Oh, that.
Prevention, right.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I think that a lot of times out in the wide world, a lot of folks think that prevention is all that naturopathy is about.
Mm-hmm.
They think that we are predominantly helping people to be healthier so as to not get sick in the future, and maybe don't quite recognize the fact that naturopathy has the power to bring people from a very, very unwell state back to a state of complete health. And so the prevention principle really underscores the fact that that's just one of the 6 principles. And sure, what we do when we're bringing people back to health is also preventing them from getting sick in the future. And it's also educating them on when you do get acutely ill in the future, when you have a cold or the flu or food poisoning or something like that, how do you treat that or not treat it so that that acute illness runs its course properly and doesn't drive you back into chronic illness again? And so the prevention aspect of what we do, I look at it as being sort of an ancillary fringe benefit of what we do. I don't look at it as being anything remotely close to the main part of what we do, but I think that in general society, people really do kind of see naturopathy that way. And that's incumbent upon us to do education out in the wider environment, to teach people what we do.
So these are principles of naturopathic philosophy, but they're also principles of healing, and you'll find them in acupuncture, you'll find them in Ayurveda, you'll find them in homeopathy, you'll find them in all sorts of traditional cultures and shamanism and wherever. So you understand that we're talking about them because this is a modern expression of them, and that's why you're meeting them at this point in this program. Anything else about naturopathy that's, you know, needs to be said at this sort of foundational time?
Yeah, I think that one thing that's really important to know about naturopathy at this stage of the development of the profession is that when you compare it to Ayurveda, for example, or Chinese medicine, it is a relatively young medical system, similar to homeopathy, and they were sort of growing up at the same time and along similar trajectories in some places. And I think it's important to acknowledge the youngness of the profession, being mostly rooted in the 1800s, as opposed to Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, which are 3,000 to 5,000 years that they've been in existence. There's a real growth process that is still taking place in the profession and defining itself, and figuring out how it's going to exist in the modern culture, because certainly the culture of the Western world has changed hugely since 1850. So how are we going to exist in this modern world, I think, is a very important question. And one thing I think it's important for budding naturopaths to really keep in mind is the importance of the principles going forward in our practice and how key those are to prevent us from losing our connection to the tradition of our medicine, because there are other aspects of medicine in our society, like functional medicine, for example, or integrative medicine as practiced by a medical doctor, that are done in ways that look very similar to naturopathy in some ways, or very similar to nutritional medicine, but they don't have the vitalistic background. They don't have the whole medical system base of our tradition, and I think that that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind as we move forward as a profession into the future, and making sure that we don't lose our roots.
I love it. You reminded me of a lot of things there. The vitalistic tradition that we come from. It's very important.
Yeah.
In the 21st century, we're in an evidence-based, science dominated world, and the vitalistic tradition is not always fashionable in some parts. Right here, we talk about it all the time. We're fine with it, but it's, I suppose, less cool in some other places. Yeah?
Right. And we might be thankful that quantum physics is starting to come up with some explanations for us for some of this stuff. But I don't know, from where I'm coming from, I've experienced it enough firsthand that I really don't need science to be able to explain everything to me that I do. it's great to have science explain some of it, and I'm okay with science not explaining all of it.
That
It's
is
part of the great mystery.
The great mystery. Love it. That is a natural pause. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.